I enjoy a bit of PC gaming every now and again, but after a long day sitting at my desk for work, the last thing I want to do is spend any more time there. So I got myself a Steam Deck so I can lounge about on the sofa playing Warhammer games. So I'm going to tell you which ones run and which ones play well, just in case you'd ever thought of picking up a Steam Deck and you were worried that your favourite game won't work on it. There is a rating system on Steam Deck, so it's either verified, which means it works flawlessly, playable, which means you can play it but there might be a few things that don't work quite right, unplayable, which means it's probably not worth trying, and also untested, which means Valve just haven't got around to testing it and putting it in their database yet. So it could be verified playable or unplayable, you don't know with those ones. The thing is, some of the games that were marked as unplayable actually work, so I'll tell you which ones those are. So it's a bit of a minefield, as you can probably see. Adeptus Titanicus Dominus, which is a really good Titan game, that's untested, but it works absolutely fine. The problem with this one is that the developer lost the license for the game and it's been pulled from the Steam store. There are graphic issues and cutscenes, they just don't show up at all, but apart from that, you can get through that and you can play the game. Armageddon DA ORKS, that's untested, but it still works absolutely fine. I'm not a big fan of this game, I wouldn't invest a lot of time in it, but it does work. I haven't specifically gone out to buy all these games, I got some of them in a humble bundle in other collections, so that's why I've got so many random weird games. Sanctus Reach, which is marked as unplayable, and it works absolutely fine. It's got some weird standard controls, it uses the left button and the right button for mouse buttons instead of the triggers, because the triggers are standard on most games, but that one uses the buttons instead. It's a bit weird. So it takes some getting used to. This is another one that I won't invest a lot of time in, but it works. Battlefleet Gothic Armada, and this is not playable, and I can see why it's marked as not playable. It loads okay, there are graphical issues and cutscenes, it plays well for the first mission, absolutely flawlessly, it's really good fun. I had to remap a couple of the triggers to be mouse buttons, so there's triggers on the back of the Steam Deck and you can map them as mouse buttons, and that's what I did. It made it a lot easier to play this game. The main issue with this is the mission completed screen glitches and you can't see where the continue button is, so you've got to press all over the screen. I think I got lucky. The first time I tried it I couldn't continue at all, but the second time I managed to hit the right spot. So it is possible, it's just not great. Blood Bowl Chaos Edition's next. It's marked as untested, but it plays fine. It takes a while to load. First time I loaded it I didn't think it was going to. Second time I went away from the Steam Deck for a while, and when I came back it was loaded. It's good fun, the AI is not brilliant. It's a very playable game though, the controls work well on it, and I will play this one a bit more. I used to play Blood Bowl on the iPad, which is just about exactly the same game, so I'll play this as well. Blood Bowl 2 is marked as playable, and this was actually one that I really had to change the controls on to actually make it playable, because you've got to use the touchscreen and the hitboxes are so small that you sometimes do the wrong action. If you've got to choose between a skull and a POW, sometimes you choose the skull, which you would never do in Blood Bowl, so you let the other guy hit you, it becomes a turnover. You'd never do that in a game of Blood Bowl, but it happens quite frequently here. So the best thing to do here is change the left hand trackpad to a mouse, and you can change the triggers to be mouse buttons, and then it works perfectly. Some of the text is really small, but it doesn't really hinder it, it plays nicely, and the animated cutscenes are great. Next we've got Space Hulk, which is untested. It loads fine, some of the cutscenes are jerky, but it's a very old game, so you might expect that. The on-screen buttons are big enough to use, and the on-screen text is big enough to read. This was a really good one. I have gone back to this time and time again, and I'm going to play it all the way through yet again. It's almost exactly the same with Space Hulk Ascension. This one's marked as playable, and it is very playable. The graphics look great on the Steam Deck, and it plays like Space Hulk, what more can you ask for? Let's shift to a bit of fantasy, and we've got the Total War series. So Total War Warhammer 1 doesn't load at all. Forget about that one. Maybe you could get it running with tweaks and things like that, but straight off the Steam Deck, doesn't work. To my surprise, Total War Warhammer 2 works. It's not a great experience, all the text is really small. You can hold the Steam button and press the left shoulder button and it zooms in on the text, but you don't want to have to do that too frequently. A lot of the buttons are really small as well. What I did have to do was change the right trackpad from being a joystick to being a mouse, because if you leave it as a joystick then it always centres, so you're trying to move the mouse up and as soon as you let go of the trackpad then the cursor centres in the middle of the screen, and it's really frustrating to hit buttons. So it wasn't that playable to begin with. When I changed it to being a mouse, It became a lot more playable, but it was frustrating. I mean, you would not play this if you had the option of playing it on a big monitor. It's not that kind of game, but I thought it would be cool to try it on the Steam Deck. It's not really meant for that. It does play, but it doesn't play well. Total War Warhammer 3 was marked as unplayable, and I think this is because there are some infrequent crashes. It's not very often, but you do sometimes get crashes when you're in the middle of a battle, which is very frustrating. Compared to Total War Warhammer 2 though, it plays a lot better, and I don't know why. It's a lot smoother. Things are a lot more clickable. It's easier to select units in the battlefield. So I would actually play this on the Steam Deck. Maybe not often, but if I had to, I'd play it in the Steam Deck, use my cloud save, and then continue on the PC. Chaos Gate Daemonhunters was one that I really wanted to work, but is marked as unplayable. Thankfully, that doesn't matter, because it seems to have had an update since it was rated, and the buttons now work absolutely fine, so the X, Y, A, B buttons map perfectly to what's on screen, so I think it's had an update to work better on the Steam Deck or with a controller. Either way, it works fine, it's a really good experience. This is one that I will be playing a lot on Steam Deck. So this is probably one of the games you've been waiting for, and that is Dawn of War. Dawn of War 1, the very first one, it plays okay. It's marked as unplayable, but it works. You can click units with the button, you can select them with the trackpad, but it's very slow. It's very slow switching between units and things like that. I think you could map other buttons to help you out, but it's not a very good experience at all. I've completed a few missions on it, but it felt clunky. Dawn of War Dark Crusade is marked as playable. It's same as the first one really. It's pretty clunky, and if you're trying to command a big army, it doesn't do that very well. It's very slow to do that, so you just end up selecting everyone, clicking on the other guys and just zerging them. So it's not a very good experience. It sounds like I'm being really negative here and the Steam Deck isn't really worth it, but that's not my feelings on it at all. So Dark Crusade, which is one of my favourites, is playable but not great. It's exactly the same as Dawn of War Winter Assault. This is marked as unplayable. It loads fine, it plays fine, you can work through missions, but it's not a great experience. It also seems to swap the shoulder buttons around, so if you've played Dark Crusade extensively, these controls are entirely different and you'll end up deselecting units when you don't want to. Very frustrating. So next we're on to Dawn of War 2, and all these points go for Dawn of War 2, Chaos Rising and Retribution. So they play really well, all three of them. With the smaller amount of units it's a lot easier to select them. You can map buttons to abilities, so all you need to do is switch between your guys, press a button to activate an ability, and then click on the map. I've invested a lot of time in these games and I'm going to do even more because I got the Steam Deck. These are great. Retribution, which is the third one of the Dawn of War 2 series, is the best one. It just seems to control a lot smoother than the other ones, and I really enjoy playing that. Dawn of War 3 is marked as playable. It's a game that works. It's got the same flaws as Dawn of War 1. A big army is very difficult to control. I never really liked Dawn of War 3, so I'm not going to invest a lot of time in remapping buttons and getting all that kind of stuff working. If you like this, no judgment from me, then it works and you can play it on Steam Deck. Space Wolf is a turn-based tactics game and is one I could see myself really getting into. I've had it sitting in my library for years and I've never touched it, but with the Steam Deck I think that could change. I'll just sit on the couch and play away at it, I think. It works really well with standard controls, so straight out the box you can play it. Now on to the last two, and these are the best two. You might be surprised to know, but Darktide, which is a very graphics intensive game, is brilliant on it. The dual sticks work really well. You do have to remap buttons because if you want to do a slide, you've got to remap a button to shift, because I think you hold the left stick and I mapped it to the back button. So you hold the left stick and press the button and you slide. It does have a few dropped frames, but you are playing a fully fledged PC game, handheld, so it's incredible. I don't think I'm as efficient when I'm playing it on handheld as I would be on my PC, but I don't think that matters. And the last one is Space Marine. This one works brilliantly. The dual sticks are amazing on it. All the controls are great. I've completed it a few times, so I'm working my way through the game yet again, and I've loved every minute of it. Standard controls are absolutely fine. I've not noticed any graphical glitches or anything like that, so it is brilliant. I would highly recommend it for Space Marine alone. Just a note, I did test these on the fully loaded Steam Deck, so some of the lower spec ones might have more issues, but for me, I now have a mobile Warhammer gaming deck, so that is brilliant. If you're looking for something else to watch, I'd recommend this one. Cheers.